Tonight at 6, a man's death during the clearing of a homeless encampment is now sparking calls for change from the pulpit, and that's where we're going to begin tonight at 6, folks.
Well, just hours ago, community members gathered on the steps of Atlanta City Hall to continue demanding justice for Cornelius Taylor.
On the morning of January 16, 2025, the Atlanta Police Department carried out a routine sweep of an encampment on Old Wheat Street, located within the Sweet Auburn neighborhood of the city, once a vibrant beacon of black wealth, now desecrated by an interstate which fragmented it entirely. Per an account from The Guardian, the city was preparing for MLK Day festivities, and the encampment on Old Wheat Street was in the center of the activist historic neighborhood. Hurriedly, without regard for the people attempting to alert them on the side of the street, a 5-ton front loader made its way down the alley, targeting the tents lining its sidewalk. Inside one of them, entirely unaware, was Cornelius Taylor. Within moments, he was bulldozed to death, as the front loader rolled over his tent and back. His blood stained the street, his organs lacerated, pelvis cracked in half, dead upon an ambulance's arrival. Later found in his belongings were pieces of his organs riddling his pants, and one witness said, quote, "A lot of Cornelius was left on the street," unquote. Atlanta PD's account of the death presented to the public was as follows: minor injuries, no obvious signs of physical hurt, punctuated by a suggestion that Taylor likely died of a drug overdose. In the coming days, the mayor would turn away Taylor's mother from delivering a letter to his office, not addressing the situation as community members held a vigil on the street still occupied by the same make of machinery that killed their friend. With MLK Day festivities continuing as planned without the eyesore of the encampment, city officials were so adamant on clearing at any cost. All of it a testament to a city more concerned with preserving the optical image of black success than the protection of black life, as it has been for decades.
Not even a full year ago, here I am standing on Old Wheat Street. You would have seen plenty of tents lined up on the side of the street in a pretty organized encampment. But ever since the murder of Cornelius Taylor, this whole place has been vacated.
In the weeks following the murder of Taylor, the newly founded Justice for Cornelius Taylor Coalition began negotiations with the city over their approach to solving homelessness. Most efficacious of the policies concerning homelessness, typically, is a housing-first approach, incurring the least amount of cost and yielding the highest comparative decrease in homelessness. The city was disinterested. It momentarily agreed to halt its sweeps of encampments, but before the season changed, it resumed its operations. The mayor hopes to clear all encampments by the summer of 2026, when the city is slated to host the World Cup. The city agreed to create a task force with the coalition, providing housing for those who originally took refuge on Old Wheat Street, but due to a lack of results, every member eventually ended up resigning. Now the coalition focuses on mutual aid, recently hosting a sleep-in in which members of the community took to the streets to spend the night with those sheltering in encampments on Auburn Ave, as a preventative measure to dissuade the city from carelessly sweeping them again. We attended the event, in which both local organizers and members of the unhoused community gave speeches through the rainy night, providing food and essentials to the homeless present.
So get their information, donate to them. It's amazing. They get out here 3 or 4 nights a week and they pull up and they serve food. People get the experience of going to a food truck and they are treated with dignity. How many people got served by them tonight? This is kind of like our own little People's Movement Assembly. So if folks want to talk for a minute or two, your voice is important. Regardless of who you are, where you are in life, we'd like to hear from you.
You can't arrest me, you can't lock me up because I'm hungry. Provide these things that need to be provided for me, and I will not be here. And how's I supposed to be? So you tell me I can't walk and hold my sign and ask for food because you don't want to give me food, because you look at me as an outcast. We, the people, and that's what it is. We, the people. Without us, it would not be you. So I want you to understand, if we fight for we the people, that means I want you to fight for me. I don't care about your political seat. I'm still a human. What you do is inhumane. Only thing I just ask is help.
I would want, if my loved one was out here, I would want someone not to judge them because of their situation. Because your situation is not who you are, it's just what you're going through. But people are beautiful and creative. They're resilient. You know how resilient you gotta be on the street? Don't give people things that they're not asking for. But listen, be present, and realize that any one of us at any given moment could be in the situation that our brothers and sisters are in. I am grateful for all of you and for the witness and how strong it is that we're all out here together.
The murder of Cornelius Taylor is one particularly horrifying, isolated instance of mismanagement in a city that continues to mishandle its approach to homelessness, which in turn continues to worsen. A mismanagement that is mirrored in all city policies nationally. In order to understand the mismanagement in its entirety, I decided to take to the streets of Atlanta for a night, sleeping on them as I spoke to its affected community members, in order to understand how we arrived at this point and why the situation continues to worsen. This is my visual account of the worsening homelessness crisis.
Rain chances slim to none as this front pushes through, but it will bring a cold blast of air that will move in quickly. It comes with strong gusty winds, and because of that, we'll already see feels like temperatures in the teens and 20s.
Got the sun over here. So I just got into the city, into Atlanta here. It is the early afternoon here. I was checking the weather tonight. They said there's some sort of Arctic chill. Looks like it's gonna be below freezing or around freezing, which is uncharacteristic of the city. So hopefully, I know there's a shelter around the corner. It's one of the few ones on this side of town. Maybe I'll get to talk to a few people.
Where you gonna look for confirmation? And if it's ever gonna happen. So as I'm standing at the station, it might be over soon.
Something tells me that this is going to be a little bit of a recurring theme in the city. I'm where this shelter was, I believe, and it just looks entirely abandoned now, so no prospects here.
I began my journey in Atlanta's downtown neighborhood, specifically Centennial Olympic Park, whose construction in many ways marked the inception of Atlanta's rampant homelessness crisis. Atlanta won its bid to host the Centennial Olympics of 1996, in part because its commitment to urban renewal, a commitment which led to the displacement of tens of thousands of people in the city over the mere course of 5 years. For many years, the Techwood Homes housing project was situated just a few blocks from the location of this park, until the city demolished it to make space for an Olympic village which housed media personnel and athletes. This single demolition alone displaced over 1,000 people. Similarly, the park that I was maneuvering through was once referred to as Techwood Park, a space which preserved a tenth of the city's shelter capacity until it was cleared for the construction of a new Centennial Park. The shelter I had passed was one of the few remaining operational spaces of refuge in a neighborhood which was once defined by them. Countless cleanup projects ensued, and by 1996, Atlanta had displaced 30,000 people, a staggering number for a city with a population of only a few 100,000. The displacements were paralyzing. The city arrested nearly 10,000 homeless people in the year leading up to the Olympics alone, built a new prison in the heart of the city to store them in, faced scrutiny for pursuing a policy of relentless racial profiling and policing, which included pre-printing arrest citations that had African American male in their descriptions. It also expanded the lettering of its law to make legal the arrest of people for simply acting in a manner not usual for law-abiding citizens. And when it successfully achieved making the pressure of evading arrest untenable for its unhoused population, it coerced homeless Atlantans into signing away their right to ever come back to the city, sending them off with one-way bus tickets to unverified locations. When these displaced Atlantans resiliently found their way back home after the Olympics concluded, the infrastructure to support them was long gone, and homelessness in the city reached a new level of visibility. Nonetheless, the city remained steadfast in its failing approach to homelessness. The unsheltered homeless population continues to rise exponentially, and the city closed its last standing no-barrier emergency shelter in the summer of 2017. Now, APD cracks down on public gatherings like the one we attended, citing them for permitless distribution of food. While in Centennial Olympic Park, I encountered a homeless man donning drums, tapping them as he strolled around, instructing tourists on which angle to take their pictures of landmarks from. I asked him if he was hungry and he declined my offer of food, but asked if I could buy him some alkaline water and a pack of Newports. He told me he was Mormon, so I could refer to him as either Mosi or Elder Griffin, or later on as we got more familiar, his street name Diesel. As we made our way to the local CVS, I had given him an explanation of what I was doing overnight, and he asked if he could be an interview subject of mine. He said he had a creative vision for the opening scene of my interview with him, to which I digressed. He wanted to do a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. He told me he had lived all across the states and saw it essential to make clear he was a patriot, grateful to live in the land of the free.
It's all God's plan, not ours. Most people have special needs, homes and everything. I have a mission that I'm trying to complete, and it's true to life, walking with God on my side. I'm outside. Nice to meet you, world. Last thing about it, I'm gonna try. Was so bright, lay with and the twilight laughing and the heart can the birthday get through to the night and our flag
He had been on the street for 9 years. I didn't pry as to how he ended up in the situation to begin with, as I think that the question often overshadows what is to be done currently, and is used to assign blame to homeless people for their hardship, their fate signed away to the genesis of their struggle. The circumstances are usually deeply personal anyway. The majority of all homeless people have some sort of disability, and about half of them were in the foster care system growing up. I opted to learn about Mosi through the information he volunteered before I asked him direct questions. Like most homeless people, Mosi had a job. As he explained, that's why he typically avoided shelters. As I mentioned previously, the last no-barrier shelter in Atlanta was closed in 2017, meaning the ones left have curfews. If you work late or early, you're bound to not leaving or not being admitted. Unfortunately, this leads to precarious decision-making. Mosi said he was worried he had frostbite on his hands from sleeping in the street. He gave me a tour of homelessness in the city and told me about some of his day-to-day hardships. We spoke rather informally. He had once been scraped by an APD cruiser when crossing the street, which messed up his knee. His original thought was to go to the hospital, but he knew the bill would necessitate him selling his bike, his primary mode of transport. There are many sacrifices in poverty. By the time we got to the good lighting spot Mosi wanted to conduct an interview in, I was full of pointed questions, enraged by his living conditions. All of his answers, contrarily, were molded by gratitude and humility.
I'm outside. I go by Diesel.
How do you find it being out here in Atlanta?
As far as the city, I mean, it's like the heart of the world to me.
Well, what about living out here? What do you think is the hardest part of living out here for you day to day?
The hardest part of living out here day to day is it's like a dream to me. I mean, it's new to me every day. So me being homeless and not having a TV or a phone to be into the media, I say there's a whole lot worse places like New York and Philadelphia, you know. But as far as the homeless around here, it's been happening, I mean, for a long time. But as far as being homeless in other cities, I say Atlanta is the best place, you know, that really have more outreaches for the homeless. And they actually had a shelter that hold like 500-600 people, you know. To Nevada too. The best was like Nevada, but Atlanta, they do reach out to the homeless. They do. It's God's plan. He know what we're gonna be, what we're gonna go through. But it's a lot of, as far as other cities, I think I done seen more millionaires reaching out and not being able to actually experience what we be going through. It's hard where you think that having nowhere, you know, to go when it's actually cold like that, it probably, you know, hurts, but it gets better, you know. Imagine people in places where it's snowing.
With the hardships you face, they must feel like really intense, like you were telling me about your hands. And
I know, that's the first time I ever had frostbite. They froze and I couldn't open them, and when they thawed out.
And you said you had to take off work because of that.
Yeah. You know, I should have went to the hospital sooner, but I'm going tonight. I hope they do something. Like I said, it's God's plan. It's just cool to life. Love and positive is the model of the world now.
Eccentrically, Mosi requested to watch back all the footage with no audio. As aforementioned, he had a creative vision. I had no way of maintaining contact with him as he had no phone, but he said he had to run to make it in time for his performance at the Metro Diner. I withdrew some cash for him and wished him well. Now it was my time to go through the motions of Mosi's, and many others, unforgiving everyday life.
It's actually ridiculous how little sense of perspective I have, because I'm not gonna lie, I was asking him these pointed questions because obviously I'm a subjective narrator here, and I'm looking at the outside so enraged by the situation that most of the time I'm impartial to. 90% of the time I drive by a homeless person on the exit ramps here in Atlanta, I don't give them the time of day. So I don't have a pedestal to stand on when it comes to this stuff. And he's just answering all these questions with nothing but hope. And I've only been at this a few hours, and it's starting to get dark and all that. And so I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, I can't fucking do this. And it's like, what the hell sense of perspective do I have on any of this? I'm talking to this man, I'm talking to Mosi. He's grateful for every waking second. He was proselytizing when I first met him, and he carried this faithful spirit of hope the whole duration of my interview with him. There's like an epistemic barrier in the fact that I could never know what homelessness feels like, because it doesn't matter if I were to spend a month out here. At the end of the day, I have this glimmer of hope where I know that I will eventually be greeted by a warm bed, a warm shower, and I can use that to hold on with every day, and I'm counting down my days. And there's not this epistemic phenomena where I can genuinely come to know what it means to not have a home. There is no countdown for these people out here. This is just their day-to-day life. And that's the thing, no matter how rigid the concrete I sleep above tonight is, or how intense the wind which carries its arctic breeze over my face is, I will never understand the anguish of homelessness, because this whole experience for me is going to be punctuated by a period and not a question mark as to when will this all end.
Mosi had led me miles from my intended overnight camping spot on Georgia Tech's campus, showing me around the downtown area adjacent to historic Sweet Auburn, where Cornelius Taylor was murdered by APD. By the time I made my way back to campus, the sun had long set and the temperature was starting to drop. Homelessness is illegal in Georgia, meaning APD routinely arrests people for sleeping on the street, or more commonly, forces them to move around so they don't settle in anywhere where they can build encampments. Police on short notice tell the homeless to collect their belongings and move along or risk arrest, irrespective of their disabilities, leaving them vulnerable to find refuge in higher risk areas, in turn finding themselves victims of crossfire homicides and misdirected assaults, or in the case of Cornelius Taylor, a bulldozer acting with no regard for human life. Georgia Tech campus is heavily patrolled by police for this purpose of relocation, with Techwood Drive serving as a subliminal red line for the homeless. I wanted to see how APD's criminalization of homelessness plays out applicatively, so I decided I would try to make it through the night unsheltered on Tech campus. I'm not so naive that I don't understand the role my identity plays in all of this, and I think it's important to note that I was treated with a lot less scrutiny than the average homeless person would be, merely as an extension of how I look.
A MARTA station like this is always going to be a hub for people to be spending the night at, because the cabs are warmed. And then on top of that, there's actually shelter in the station itself, even when the trains stop running. So I'm looking at that as a viable option. I had successfully just gone to a Wendy's and bummed a meal. Now I'm walking past North Ave back toward the direction of Tech campus, and I passed an Atlanta Classic right behind me. This is Atlanta's magnum opus. It's a fucking coffee shop, a strip club, and a smoke shop all at a gas station. It's a little past midnight. I got back probably like 10:30 from North Ave. It's absolutely freezing now, and I just left that undergraduate center, which is locked, so there's no way for me to go back in. I'm gonna try to go get some sleep. Okay. So I found my first potential sleeping spot. There are a couple hammocks right here behind me, but this is so close to the sidewalk that I know APD comes through here. I don't know, I would hope to find somewhere a little more ideal than this. Upon second thought, now that I'm inching closer to the other hammocks, I think it may be a better idea for me to go back to the old one that I had just shown. Probably walk 10 minutes out of the way from it, but this is right on the side of the road. And so I know APD will be patrolling this area and they'll ask me why I'm sleeping here. But it's just, I don't know actually. It's a little tucked away, so maybe there's a little bit of grace in that. This is so ominously lit. And the thing is that I just watched the Georgia Tech squad car drive by. I'm a little bit in my head because honestly, it kind of feels a little embarrassing and unbecoming. Deep down, I think embedded in our cultural and social psyche is this idea that I think the way we conceive of it, that we view it as like classless and undignified, and in a way that makes you kind of perceive it as deserved. Like the person who is homeless did something to continually be in that position, and you're not really constantly attending to all the luck and the privilege of care that surrounds you, which allows you to not be homeless. I'm staring at this hammock across from me and thinking about how cold my feet are and my hands are, and how I have this primal evolutionary urge to be sheltered, and how it unnerves me that I'm not closed off in any way. I mean, look, I just heard someone speak over there, and my head literally moved like an owl. I just have this urge to be sheltered, like a very primal urge to be sheltered. And then there's this anxiety and being left completely vulnerable and sleeping here. And, I have all my stuff with me. I have some valuables on me. And just to, digress to the senses and just the kind-heartedness of people to trust them not to mess with me and anything like that. It gives you this entirely different perspective, because for once I'm not entirely removed from it. When you're not entirely removed from it, all that cycles through your head is just thinking about everything in your life that allows you to not be in this position. Where it's I don't really have family stateside, but I'd have a mother who'd do anything for me financially. And then I have all these friends who would see to it that I never spent a day outside in the cold. The biggest privilege you could be born into outside of wealth is care. And second to that is other people's perception. I have this halo over me right now. When I lay down in this hammock and someone walks by, I'm so unassuming. I have the privilege of identity on my side. No one's going to think, oh, this is some homeless guy, this is some guy on drugs. A police officer probably isn't going to be very inclined to stop and question me because of my youthful appearance, my complexion, the way I'm dressed, and the fact that I'm able to afford to dress like this, all these things coming together. And if my hand was just a little bit different, it would be infinitely more tormenting. I would have to be constantly moving around. I'd probably get kicked out immediately. It attracts a whole nother type of attention where you fundamentally don't have a right to privacy. And you fundamentally don't have a right to exist as a person. You're just an obstacle. Someone walks past me right now, and I'm knocked out. They're probably just going to think that I'm some drunk, that I'm a college kid, my finals are over, I drank too much. And the privilege of charitability is really dawning on me, I think, in a way it hasn't before, where, obviously I know day-to-day interactions, I'm treated a certain way because of the way I look, because of the way people expect me to behave in line with my identity. But that's all contingent upon their charitability. And it's extended to me in this very particular way that makes all of this so much easier. And back to that idea of it being undignified, I'm so much closer to homelessness than I am to wealth. And yet I had that, I have this internal perception of homelessness where it's it could never happen to me. There's a barrier to me even conceiving of me as being a subject of it. And in general, most people are way closer to this than they could ever imagine. You conceive of yourself as this productive being. I go to work. I maintain a sort of rigorous discipline. The difference is not in the fact that I hold a job, because the average homeless person is holding a job. The difference is not in the fact that, I'm sober, because a lion's share of homeless people actually don't do drugs at all.
And it's like, or at least they don't have a substance abuse problem, which, I mean, the average person is probably indulging to some degree. The only difference between me and those people is this network of contingency that I have with people that care about me, people that are looking out for me, a privilege of care that embeds my existence, that I'm engulfed by, that surrounds my day-to-day interactions. And I literally did absolutely nothing to deserve that. And sometimes I think there's a smugness, like, you know, I had this thought earlier when the gentleman I was interviewing, Diesel, he asked me for some change. I always used to have this thought process, a lot of other people have, where it's like, oh, maybe he's buying drugs with that money. Never really cared, you know, I'd still give the money because it's like, all right, fuck it, man, I'd probably want to do some fent if I was out here. Like, it gets to a point. I mean, I'm out here, I'm freezing, man, this feels awful. And I just get to go home after this. Imagine with no end in sight to that. I always had that thought, you know, oh, maybe they're going to use this money for drugs, and then maybe, you know, I have some moral culpability to not give them the money in that instance or whatever. Like, am I party to their bad habits? You know how much assumption I'm writing off of by even having that thought to begin with? Because just think about yourself. Everyone needs expendable income. Why would that be any different for a homeless person? Just because they want some liquid cash and don't want to explain it to you, instead of you being like, oh man, I could buy you a meal instead, because they know you're assuming right now. They don't want to explain like, oh, something may come up in my day-to-day that I all of a sudden will need $10, $5. Like, that person the next day could get robbed, you know? They could have their money stolen from them where they're sleeping. Or, I don't know, it's just they might have to buy something like, let's say the train is down. All of a sudden now I have to buy maybe an Uber for a certain amount of distance to get to the bus station to be able to go to work before I lose my job, which is my only source of income. Like, I may need $10. I spend more than $10 every day. Why do I have this judgment when someone asks me for liquid cash? And why am I running to an assumption? I don't have that charitability with these people. Like, I'm not stepping outside of myself when conceiving of any of this. And when I first set out to do this, I was like, okay, dude, like, oh, I'm going to go live on the street. What the fuck am I going to learn from that? But honestly, it has been illuminating because I'm sitting here and I'm relegating myself to not spending any money. And I'm really realizing how much someone's goodwill, how far it can take you. And just being homeless is like this theatrical invitation of judgment until someone finally gives you the time of day and gives you a breath of fresh air from this burden of existence. And for him, when I was interviewing him, to be so grateful is beyond me. That's the patience of a saint, to speak so highly about every day that God gives him. I can't have that. I couldn't for a second live that life. And yet, when I get to an on-ramp and there's a guy there standing, shaking a tin can or has a sign, God knows how he got the materials to even make that sign in the first place, but he has a sign asking for $1. My thought process is, oh, brother, here we go again. Like, I got to look straight. I can't do this today. Really? Really, dude? Really? Like, you can't decentralize your perspective for half a second? Now my feet are freezing out here, and I don't know exactly where I'm going to get my breakfast tomorrow. And, like, I'm annoyed. I'm annoyed at a past version of myself. And honestly, I know it to be a future version of myself, because when I'm separated from this actively, I'm probably going to fall back into the same way of thinking. But I hope that this kind of preserves a lucidity in me in my future interactions. It is officially freezing. It's past 1 a.m. I'm gonna set up in this hammock behind me. I'm gonna carry everything that's valuable on my person. So I have some pockets in my jacket. I'm gonna put my phone in there. My nose is starting to run. But I'm gonna put my phone in there, my wallet, my keys. So if my bag gets taken, I guess it's not the end of the world. I'm gonna try to get some sleep at this point in the night. I don't think my feet have been this cold since I went to Groundhog Day in February. I mean, I'm just wearing Chuck Taylors. Such a stupid idea. And then my hands are completely exposed. But I'm going to try to throw my hood over myself and get some sleep. Okay, you can't really see it, but oh my God, this hammock is so brutally uncomfortable. This is like anti-homeless architecture in and of itself. There's a line that runs right down it. It's painful on the back.
and my feet are actually so cold. Like, I'm worried about frostbite because, I mean, he was saying earlier he got frostbite out here, so. My hammock, my ominous seat. I'm not gonna be able to fall asleep with my feet this cold, or my hands. I'm gonna try my best though. The thought of just being out here, like, I know I'm in the safest part of the city, but just being out here completely in the open like this and asleep, where I don't know what the hell my response time is to anything, like, that's starting to kind of worry me a little bit. Okay, it's a little past 2. I'm so miserable. It doesn't even matter that, like, this is so uncomfortable. The issue is that I've slept so little. And it's all because of the fact that I actually feel like my feet are about to fall off. And I mean, I'm looking at the temperature and it's getting to a point where that could be a very real point of concern. So I made like a makeshift little, like, I wrapped my feet with a spare crew neck that I had, and it's not helping at all. Like, I can barely feel my toes. You can't even see it.
After only an hour in the hammock, I had become restless. My feet felt as though they were being severed by the cold and my hands were on the precipice of following. I decided to relocate.
My reasoning is twofold. One, I thought I heard a gunshot, and then I thought I was just tweaking, and then just like within APD's response time, I heard sirens. It wasn't that close, but that, I was like, that freaked me out a little bit. That's 2% of the reason. 98% of the reason is I genuinely can't feel my feet. Like, now that I've been out here a few hours, and it just keeps dropping. The temperature just keeps dropping every time I check. I thought I had saw some campfires earlier, or maybe some steam coming up from a vent. So my new game plan, because I can't fall asleep, is just gonna be to hold my feet over that as I warm up a little bit until the MARTA opens up.
I had found the manhole cover I noted earlier exuding a large volume of rancid but warm steam. I decided to set up camp in its proximity until the MARTA train opened up, intermittently sleeping and warming up.
Let me actually grab this thing. Well, it's hard to make it out, but it's coming from like a little manhole cover sewer thing, I think. I don't really know exactly what it is, but it is warm as hell, and thank the Lord for it. It has a disgusting smell, but it's time to make some sacrifices. Basically, I don't know if you can see, my nose is real red, and so are my hands. So I'm just gonna spend probably like an hour just warming myself over this.
At 6 a.m., I made my way to the train.
Past 6 in the morning now. I had thought that the MARTA opened at 5. It turned out it opened at 6 today because it's a weekend. I forgot about that. So I've spent the last, I'm actually shaking right now, it's so cold, but I spent the last few hours going between warming myself and trying to get some sleep in that little arrangement that I had shown earlier. And God, this has been hell. That's the only way to describe it. So now I got like a mile walk, I think it is, to the North Avenue station of the MARTA, and then from there I'll be able to get out of this and then like be in the train car, which should be way nicer.
Some train cars were warm, others seemed to be air conditioned.
Alright, I'm about to board the train toward the airport. I feel like I gotta be a little more vigilant on the MARTA than outside, but hopefully it's a nice change of pace. And honestly, out there I was just too tired and too cold to even be hungry, so I think all I'm concerned about right now is sleep. I've probably cumulatively got about 2 hours of sleep, so hopefully I make up some of it on the train. The train just goes to the airport and back, so I'll just be riding that continually.
The majority of the ridershare was composed of homeless people sheltering from the cold, just as I aimed to do. At each line of the train, an announcement came for us to disembark, anti-loitering measures instituted by the city. Although preferable to sleeping outside, as almost anything is, sitting on the train attempting to sleep as it rattled over its tracks was nauseating. In my waking moments, I felt sick and exhausted. The night seemed endless, and when the sun eventually began beaming through the train windows, it felt as if I were Paul receiving his vision once more.
So the sun is up, and I've just been bouncing from train to train, sleeping. I'm starting to get pretty nauseous from it all, but I've been at it for a few hours, catching up on my sleep.
So now I am older than my mother and father when they had their daughter. Now what does that say about me?
After countless hours on the train and in the cold outside, I was nearing the 24-hour mark of my experience. I couldn't imagine having no end in sight to this and continuing on resiliently. As I disembarked the train in Lake Claire to sit with my thoughts for a minute, I remembered Cornelius Taylor and Mosi. Living on the street is defined by almost every externality coming together in one way or another to work against you, to complicate your life and introduce into it new adversities with every waking new moment. The life of Cornelius was arduous until his last moment. A city government formulated solely to represent him and his interests as a human being was the final force of depersonalization in his life. It erased his personhood in everyday ignorations when he asked for help, when he sought refuge, erased it in his interactions with police as he was herded like cattle, and ultimately erased it in a final permanent removal of his personhood as it violently bulldozed him into the concrete it valued more than his life. A person with hopes, ambitions, dreams of overcoming, mercilessly murdered and posthumously lied about. With the representatives of the city he called home falsely assigning blame to him over his own death, signaling that to them he was nothing but an infrastructural obstacle to take care of. But that's not how his community remembered him, as they knew the depths of Cornelius, so around his memory they unified. An old anecdote from Mr. Rogers says whenever you see bad news, displays of horrifying violence or grim worldly developments, you ought to look for the helpers, as there are always helpers. A sentiment echoed in the works of Justice for Cornelius Taylor Coalition, as they provide food and essential goods to those struggling in the same way he did, displaying pictures of him as they do so. Words reaffirmed by Mosi, as he was quick to mention the abundance of aid he has access to instead of complaining about his intensely difficult circumstances on the street. And although there is no substitute for the revolting premature loss of life at the hands of the city, there is comfort in knowing that Cornelius Taylor has been immortalized through the shelter provided for his community as a consolation for their loss of him, through the hot meals he was deprived of being delivered by those sprung into action after learning of the cruelty and injustice of his murder, and through a material reminder that wherever there is tragedy, there will always be helpers to look for.
Living low down and I'm using again. And I'm hating my name 'cause I'm cursed like my kin. And if I should see you before I'm condemned, I hope you're deceived by the webs that I spin. And I wish I was who I appeared, 'cause I despise the man in the mirror.